Yeah. But before we do that, I want to make sure that, so if we talk about the fears that people are experiencing, as you said, a lot of the time it's an intellectual fear. It's not real, but it feels so real.
It feels real, yeah.
Right? Like when someone says like, oh, I'm really scared about what if I get rejected from the job? Or I'm really scared that my partner's going to leave me. Or I'm really scared that I don't feel good enough or smart enough to make it in whatever field it is. Mm-hmm. Those feel extremely real.
Yeah.
How do you process a feeling that feels real, even though it may be intellectual?
Yeah, well, so that's the beautiful thing about being a human. And I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's actually in the Bhagavad Gita. It gives an example of a lion attacking you or a tiger attacking you at night. And, one of the examples I give in the book is similar to that, where it's like, if you think about it, we've all had this, we have a really intense dream. Like you're walking in a forest, whatever it is, and you see a lion, it starts running after you. You run from it, you turn, you look over your shoulder, it's getting closer, you're still running from it, you turn, you look over your shoulder, just as its teeth are about to dig into you. And you wake up in the middle of the night, and your body didn't move at all. But you're sweating, you're out of breath, your heart rate is intensely going. And the amazing thing about being a human, they usually say, in any case, is what your biggest strength is also can be your biggest fault. The thing about humans is that we can project our minds into a future that doesn't exist yet. And so what we can do right now is we can sit here, we're in the studio, everything is amazing. We have food, water, shelter, clothing, everything. But if I'm like, as a lot of people do, like if I'm starting a business, right? I can sit here and I can think, well, I really want to start this business. But then I start playing out all of the things that could go wrong, which is what we tend to do. Not what goes right, but what could go wrong. When I project my mind into that future, the crazy part is that my mind and my body are constantly connected. So my brain is sending neuropeptides to my body and creating hormones as if that moment is actually happening right now. And so what happens is we tend to, as humans, as a protection mechanism, we tend to project ourselves into a future that is fearful, that is scary, and that fearful, scary feeling usually keeps us in the exact same place. And so what I always say is like, if I'm going to imagine the worst that could happen, why don't I at least try to see the best that could happen? And so if I'm going to notice myself, the awareness of like, I'm really in a lot of fear right now with starting this business. And I'm going, man, what's the worst that could happen? Well, then I might as well close my eyes and say like, what's the best that could happen? And what would it feel like to start this business and to be able to crack $1 million in a business? And how proud of myself would I be to break $1 million in sales and to be able to build this and travel with my family and provide what I've always wanted to provide. And if I'm going to feel the feelings of fear, why don't I also just try on feeling the feelings of success and getting there? And so if we notice it's an intellectual fear, the first piece that I always say is there's three pieces. There's the awareness of it. Okay, I'm aware that I'm in a state of fear. I need a practice to get myself out of that. Okay, if I notice myself in a state of fear, what's my practice to get myself out of it? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to calm down and take 6 deep breaths. And I'm going to connect back to my heart. And I'm going to ask myself, like, what's the best thing that could happen? That's the practice to get myself out of it. And then the last piece is repetition. So it's awareness, it's practice, it's repetition. If I do it over and over and over again, eventually I start to rewire myself. So like one of the things that I found in myself years ago that I didn't like was that I judge people. And I'm like, man, I love people. Like I try to be of service as much as I can, but an immediate thought that will come in my head sometimes is like judgment of somebody that I don't know. And I just judge them. And I was like, I don't like that pattern. I want to change this pattern within myself. It's awareness. I become aware of what I want to change. And the first time I really did it, I was at a grocery store and this guy had this like Bluetooth, like the long Bluetooth. It was like as if he was, making cold calls at an office, but he was at the grocery store. And immediately the first thought in my head was judgment. And I always say you can't change your first thought, but you could change your second thought. So I noticed a judgment as the first thought. Awareness. My practice that I decided for myself was I'm going to force myself in my head to say 3 things that I like about this guy. I paused myself in the moment. I found myself in a pattern that I don't want to be in anymore. What are 3 things that I like about this guy? And I said it, and then I went on about my day. And I started doing this over and over and over and over again. And one thing that I noticed is that my first thought started changing to less judgment and more acceptance. Because ultimately that's what I really want to work on, is more acceptance and loving of people and of myself. And so I think it's becoming aware of it. Once you're aware of the things that the pattern you're trying to change, what's the practice that you're going to take yourself down? and then noticing that you're just going to need to do it over and over and over again. But one of the biggest keys is to give yourself grace as you're doing it, because a lot of times we become aware and then we judge ourselves and we beat ourselves up for it. So I think it's giving yourself a lot of love and grace and going, hey, I've noticed this pattern. Don't worry, we're going to change it. Let's go on this practice, and just continuing to do that.
Yeah, it's so well said. I think so often we get scared even of having the thought of what could be possible because we're scared that it can't be possible. And we just find another thing to be fearful of. And I love this idea of what you're saying around transforming your thoughts, because I've definitely, the more and more I've studied books, the more and more I've read and I've thought, I've discovered that all of our failure and success in life is based